What'd you make?
I made a Christmas card for St. Patrick's Day.
Let's see, what does it say? Let's see.
It says, Merry Christmas and I am a little red pill.
All right, little red pill. Very good.
Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. We are back, and boys and girls, we got a ton of drama going on right about now. We're going to try and get to some of that, a few interesting stories in particular today. But first, I got to call this out because I believe this very well may be my first Christmas card of the season. How sweet is that? And you just saw the video, super adorable. And how dope is it that it comes from My Little Red Pill? This is Vitamin Q on Twitter. My Little Red Pill, who loves you and your show, made a Christmas card for you, SPM. I know. Thank you, Red Pill. I loved your card, and I love your show, too. Thank you very much. And I'm pretty excited because this is my first card of the season, so I'm a little bit nervous, too. But mostly, just excited. She watches every show. You watch the boring ones, too? You could be watching cartoons or something. No, watch the boring ones too. There's a lot in there, so pay attention. She loved the NATO quick burn. Thank you, Red Pill. And you know what? I want to say something about that. There's a lot of people that like the quick burns, and I appreciate that because, as many of you know, I like a cheap laugh over nothing sometimes. But you know what, Red Pill? There's a lot of people that don't like the quick burns. Yep, they're actually my most disliked videos, and there's a lot of people, and you know what they do? They leave nasty comments in my comment section, and they tell me that I'm wasting my time and that I should just be serious and just deliver the news like every other random knucklehead, right? And that all these stupid quick burn videos are useless and won't ever red pill anybody. And you know what I say? I say, well, take a look at little red pill right here getting red pilled because she watched my NATO quick burn. So it's almost like these quick burn videos are more effective than their negative comments. So I guess what we can say is ignore the haters, because haters going to hate and creators going to create. Fist bump, Red Pill. Thank you very much. And thank you for the card. Have a Merry Christmas. And I don't know why the drummers sniff the drumsticks. Maybe it's because they smell like lavender. So as you may already know, the OIG has released their report, all 476 pages of it in regards to the 4 FISA applications and the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. So we have a lot of interesting details here, and I think over the next, probably the next month or so, there's going to be a lot of channels pouring over the details on this, and we're going to talk a little bit about it today, although it is not specifically what I really want to talk about. There are some interesting things that I do want to bring up, but first I want to talk about some of these Q proofs. Now, if you're following QAnon, I want to take you to the upper left corner here, post 3642. And this was not from long ago, 2nd of December. And this is a picture of a watch, the executive order pen, and the notebook there. We've seen this photo before if you've been following QAnon. And as you can see clearly there, it looks like the time is showing right around 1:30. It looks like just before, maybe 1:29. Now, the OIG was supposed to be released at 1 o'clock, and actually it was released at 1 o'clock. But interestingly enough, it got posted at 1:29. We saw this from the Justice OIG Twitter, which you see in the upper right corner there. DOJ OIG releases review of 4 FISA applications. And then you see on their website too, they also released this on 1:29. Not to mention the Durham response, which is actually what I think is a little bit more interesting in my opinion, was also released at 1:29. Now, if you look at the bottom right corner, we see this post 3643. And we saw this the other day too. Q was taking us back to yet another post. I know it's probably a little small, but where it's highlighted in red there, post 309, where we see justice. Well, indeed, we've seen that term justice before. It seemed to be another place marker, and Q was letting us know. Now, that was labeled on the 9th of December, 2017. I know. So it was a couple of years ago to the day. And of course, if you see the timestamp there, I know it's a little bit faint there, but it was posted at 128, so very nearly 129. I'm sure it's all just strictly coincidental. And here we see another graphic showing that the Durham release was indeed at 129. So you have a few different sources there being released at 129, all connected to the DOJ. It's the DOJ's way of letting you know that everything is A-OK, hence the Q proofs, right? I get a lot of questions asking, why does Q keep posting all these Q proofs? We get it. Well, the point is to let you know that the game is still on. If you stop seeing Q proofs, you might be able to assume that something is not okay. So this is a way of letting everybody know that game is still on. And we've seen this a lot. I'm sure I wasn't the only one who picked up on this. I can hardly imagine that I was. There was a lot of people that made great graphics like this. Picking up on the 129, when we see the watch, we know a corresponding date or time is going to come real soon. So it wasn't too hard to figure out. We knew that the report was going to be released at 1 o'clock. So it should be no surprise that it all kind of got released online at 129. So there you go. And like I said, we're not going to cover a ton of the OIG report today, but I do want to mention that what I thought was the real important takeaway was the statement from John Durham, and here's part of it. I have the utmost respect for the mission of the Office of Inspector General and the comprehensive work that went into the report prepared by Mr. Horowitz and his staff, Durham said. However, our investigation is not limited to developing information from within parts of the Justice Department. Our investigation has included developing information from other persons and entities, both in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. Okay, well, we knew this already too, right? And we knew that this was going to be the real meat of the matter. What we really want to do is we want to hear from Horowitz and we want to hear from Durham. We want to see what Durham picked up on because he's got a much wider scope, right? Now, the importance of the OIG report is pretty clear too because we have to really show the political aspect of all of this skullduggery, right? We have to lay it out. Now, most of this you're probably very familiar with, right? We already know that the DOJ weaponized this whole Steele dossier and they supplanted fake information so that they could have a reason to even open up these FISA warrants in the first place. We know that the whole FISA court thing is a little bit sketchy to begin with. We know who signed off on these warrants. We know who renewed these warrants. We know who was tailed. So we already know all this, but there's still a lot of this not being reported in the mainstream media, which sadly is where we still have to get this out. So the OIG report is going to be probably a source for talking points for the next couple of months, but I really am looking forward to seeing what Durham has to say on a much bigger level. Now, I believe President Trump feels the same way I do. He's not as interested in this IG report as he is with this Durham report, where the real meat of the matter exists, and he expressed it very clearly at his rally in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So I'm gonna let him do the explaining with a montage.
Oh, it's a montage, cause we ain't trying to watch the whole dang thing now.
It all started with the Russia witch hunt, right? Then the Inspector General's shocking report proved that the Obama FBI obtained secret warrants to spy on my campaign based on a phony foreign dossier of debunked smears paid for by crooked Hillary Clinton and the DNC. Right? The FBI failed to disclose the nature of the political hit job to the FISA court. They hid it, they deceived it, and they lied. The dossier was written by a discredited foreign agent who, quote, desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being the United States president. What's this? Folks, they spied on our campaign, okay?
So that pretty much sums up the last 3 years. Like all of it. Right there. Yep.
What they did is so unbelievable. Oh, I look forward, I don't know, I keep away. I look forward to Bull Durham's report. That's the one I look forward to. And this report was great by the IG, especially since he was appointed by President Barack Hussein Obama. Considering that fact, it was great, because we learned a lot of things that nobody would have found out very easily, although I suspect we would have.
All right, so this is interesting, but I don't imagine we're going to get any real bombshells out of Horowitz. We're going to see some interesting things in this report, and I do imagine that he's cooperating and all that, but I don't necessarily think he's going to go out of his way to throw his buddies under the bus, right? We're not going to see all these criminal referrals like had been talked about on the mainstream media. That's not necessarily the case. And let's keep in mind that when this all got dropped, Durham's statement was already there, right at the same time, which shows that Durham was already not on the same page and wanted to make it very clear to the public. I think that's very important, and I think that Trump does too. He recognizes that. We're not going to see any big whoop-de-doos out of the IG report. But it is important to show that this person was able to lay out the political aspect of all this. Now we get to see the criminal aspect. But you have to be able to bridge the gap, and you have to be able to kind of place these stepping stones in place, if you will, if you ever want to red pill any newer people. And these are people that wouldn't have supported Trump in the first place. So being able to lay this out is important, but it's most certainly not going to be any big boom, boom, boom.
Remember? Peter Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page. Remember? Lisa, I love you so much. Lisa, please, Lisa, please. Lisa, I've never loved anyone like you. We won't allow this to happen to our family. Lisa, please, tell me you love me, Lisa. I love you. Peter, I love you. I love you like I've never loved anyone. And if for any reason she loses, even though she's a stone-cold, corrupt person, if for any reason she loses, Peter, we've got to have an insurance policy. We have to do it. Because we're going to go, and that's what's been happening for the last 2.5 years.
All right, so this is interesting on a few different levels. First of all, it's great comedy for the POTUS. He's killing it out at the rally. He's making a great joke. This is kind of what he does best. Love it or hate it, this is what he does very well. Now, he actually goes on to talk about the fact that he heard that Peter Strzok received a restraining order. And of course, that would add a new layer to this story, which kind of adds on to a theory that I'm not so sure Peter Strzok and Lisa Page really are lovers. However, I do think there's a reason why this narrative is being presented. Now consider Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok is married, so that leaves us another character, a jilted lover. And we already saw this. We saw this a few weeks ago where Peter Strzok's wife had presented that, she was the one who found the texts. And oh my God, I couldn't believe he was cheating on me. I was so heartbroken, right? You have the jilted lover. But let's also consider that Peter Strzok's wife is Melissa Hodgman. And Melissa Hodgman, in October of 2016, was promoted to Associate Director of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Pretty powerful position. And that's curious enough. But what's more curious is that she was promoted hours, not days, hours after the FBI found classified information on Hillary's laptop. Who was in charge of that investigation? Her husband, Peter Strzok. So ladies and gentlemen, I would humbly suggest that the reason POTUS keeps bringing this up is because he wants to turn our attention to the relationship itself. Not so much because he wants to clown them about being lovers, but because he wants to point out that there's a third party involved, the one that found the text messages, allegedly, right? And these text messages said what? Don't worry, we'll stop him. Well, what better way to stop him, right? Than to just simply have Obama appoint your wife to the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, where they could review all the fraud and financial dealings that might have gone on in that laptop, only to decide that it wasn't such a big deal. Seems like a big deal to me. Seems like a heck of a insurance policy. Ladies and gentlemen, I would argue that Melissa Hodgman is the insurance policy. Now, 2 weeks later, James Nobody's homie, Corney, decides to reopen the investigation. And then, of course, we have the infamous meeting with Bill Clinton and Aunt Loretta Lynch on the tarmac, in which Bill Clinton waited for hours to meet Aunt Loretta Lynch, only to decide that they're just going to talk about grandkids for a while. Well, somebody must have had audio of that conversation, right? What we do know is after that conversation, this email situation just became a matter. Case closed. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, don't believe the hype when it comes to this whole lover situation. I think there's a lot more to this story. Keep in mind, there are a ton of exchanges going back and forth between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Neither of these two were low level. Lisa Page would love to have you thinking that she worked in the mailroom, but she pulled rank. She had a lot of rank. And so did Peter Strzok, even more so. He was in charge of the Clinton email investigation. And he's known about this ever since 2015 when the ICIG warned that some of these emails were being shared with Chinese officials. So he had a lot of rank. So did Lisa Page. And I suppose if you present this theory that they're lovers, that's going to help explain the reason why they were going back and forth so many times. But if they're not lovers, those communications seem a little bit more curious. They seem a little bit more devious, a little bit more professional, suggesting that this wasn't just political bias. This was an active operation. And of course, at the same time, this whole lover narrative tends to soften what may be the perception of the most devious person involved in Melissa Hodgman, who gets promoted to the head of the SEC, who would end up reviewing a lot of that information on that laptop. And of course, paint her in the light as the jilted lover. So that's my 2 cents on that. Keep in mind, POTUS brought up very expressly this rumor of this restraining order against Peter Strzok. That adds a whole new wrinkle to this thing, right? If they were indeed lovers, would he really want to hurt Lisa Page? Why is he getting a restraining order? Why is she so afraid of Peter Strzok? I thought he really cared about her, was going to help stop this whole thing. Unless, of course, he's not really her lover and he's just more of a angry agent that's a little bit frustrated because you were a little bit more forthright in your testimony than he was. Anyway, we're moving on to this story. This was a thread I did yesterday. James Corney. Now, before I begin this thread, I want to point out that this is simply one trail of thought. I have a whole bunch of ideas in regards to this whole corn thing that we've been talking about with James Comey and James Corney and whatnot. So please keep in mind that I am simply going in sort of a linear fashion today in regards to this trail of thought, but there are many different ideas. But if you are not familiar with what we're talking about, you will see here, I'm going to put up a graphic here in regards to the OIG report. And you can see there that in the search bar up above that we have the word Corney typed in. Now, James Comey's name doesn't really pop up, but if you enter the name Corney, Corney, we get 149 references. Okay, so James Nobody's homie Comey is now James Nobody's Corney. You get the idea. Well, what's curious about this is because Q talked about this a while back on the 3rd of March, 2019. You see on the left of your screen, post 2943. And you see right here, the special counsel is authorized to conduct the investigation confined by then FBI Director James 8 Corney in testimony before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and so on and so forth. I don't know exactly what that date was right there. But you see what's going on, right? This name is misspelled. And in the OIG report, 149 references to Corney. Q told us this 281 days ago on March 3rd, 2019. Now, before we move on with the thread, I want you to note that the timestamp of this, 2943, is 6/17. I know. Now I want to point out a tweet from Enoch at Elenically on Twitter. Was Q teaching us how the deep state cloaks their names from certain documents to possible get around FOIA requests? After the Comey Corney discovery above, Anons have now found Podesta Podesta and Obama Obarna. And here you can see right there the Honorable Barack Obarna. And here's one from the WikiLeaks emails in regards to maybe a John or Tony Podesta. So you get the idea. Very possible. It looks like some knuckleheadery is being done with these names. Could this be to avoid future prosecution or getting around these FOIA requests? Could very well be a mixture of both. But let's keep this in mind as we move forward. Now, back to me. I'm just kidding. Back to my thread. So I got to thinking about this whole corn thing, and I've narrowed it down to a few possible references. And you know what? That's a lie. I have more. I have more than 3. I lied to you. I don't know why I only gave you 3. It must have been late. I lied to you. Number 1, Clinton email investigation. That's true. Number 2, David Corn and his leaking of intel. Remember, he's the dude from Mother Jones. And of course, this was one of the publications that got the Steele dossier leaked to them. And I do believe that David Corn is involved here. And I do believe that David Corn is a knucklehead. I'm not so sure these references are directly to him, but I do think he's involved. Number 3, FBI and their relation to China. And that's what I want to talk about right now. The pic says new growth, and this is in reference to an older tweet from James Nobody's Homie Comey, and I say suggesting there was old growth. Well, we're looking at new growth right now, right? We're looking at a bunch of little treelings coming out of the ground, and I know that's not a real word. Don't worry about it. But anyways, in Iowa, so good to see new growth in Iowa and across the country. And this was from June 17th, 2018. I know, but even more curious is that June 17 is 6/17, and that's the timestamp I just asked you to remember from post 2943 where Q posted corny. I know, it's just another one of those many coincidences. Well, now I want to take you back to 2016, and because I'm too lazy to edit it, we're just going to do it right here in my thread. Got a flashback of size, yeah, take you back, yeah. Don't worry about it. The idea, according to court records, was to steal the seeds and bring them back to China where they would allegedly be copied, then counterfeited by a large Chinese agri-corporation, Beijing Dabenam Technology Group. And this right here, this little thing right here is a story of my life. But we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about the story of someone else's life. This is from thevoiceofthepeopletoday.com. And this is from back in April 2016. A very curious story that set my mind off on this thread in the first place. Entitled, "The FBI is now working for Monsanto." Monsanto corporate executives probably thought they had a decent amount of influence with the federal government, but they may never have thought that their genetically modified food products would become protectorates of the FBI, all under the guise of national security. Now, I'm just going to stop there for just a second. For those of you, I think most people are familiar with Monsanto around the world, but if you're not, they deal with a lot of different food companies. They've been around for a very long time. As a matter of fact, they were actually the part of the company that developed Agent Orange back in the Vietnam War. I don't want to go way into that, but they've been putting in poison, and they were really famous for a product called Roundup, which was sort of a weed killer and whatnot. But that's what Monsanto does. And of course, they've gotten into the food industry and also with the seed trading industry. As reported by the Des Moines Register, which is in Iowa, in recent days, protecting America's lucrative GMO seed corn industry now rises to the level of fighting terrorists and government spies, according to the FBI, which has invoked broader powers authorized by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, in a case against 2 Chinese siblings who allegedly plotted to steal patented GMO seeds from cornfields in Iowa. Now, I'm going to take you down about halfway here. Defendants Ma Hailam and Ma Eun have been charged with planning to steal patented GMO seeds from agribusiness giants DuPont Pioneer and Monsanto, the paper said. The idea, according to court records, was to steal the seeds and bring them back to China where they would allegedly be copied, then counterfeited by a large Chinese agri-corporation, Beijing Dabenam Technology Group. Yikes. So all that goes in your mouth. If convicted, the suspects could face a maximum of 10 years in prison. The Des Moines Register reported further. Now, this is curious. In 2013, Nicholas Kleinfeld, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Iowa, indicted the siblings and 5 other Chinese citizens on charges of theft of trade secrets. In a move that defense attorneys call breathtaking, prosecutors plan to introduce evidence at trial gathered under FISA, which allows the FBI to bypass a traditional search warrant. Agents seeking evidence instead need only get approval from a secret Washington, D.C.-based court designed to hear complex national security cases. Well, that court is the FISA court. and it is staffed by regular federal judges who serve non-renewable 7-year terms. It should be noted that the court's proceedings are carried out in secret, and that because these federal judges are not fluent in intelligence, community, national security jurisprudence, the court rarely turns down a warrant request. Well, that's pretty telling, right? That alone helps explain how the FBI could inject itself into a case involving the theft of Monsanto and DuPont GMO seeds under the mantle of national security that would give the agency additional authorities it may not normally possess, such as the power to present secret evidence without divulging how the agency obtained it. All right. So that's a little bit speculative there, to be fair, that last paragraph. This case involves a breathtaking and unprecedented expansion of the government's use of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, Des Moines attorney Mark Weinhardt wrote in court papers. For the first time in the statute's history, as far as our research reveals, the government used FISA to investigate a trade secret dispute between two privately owned companies. Here is a companion article from ABC News entitled "The Spy Who Came In from the Cornfields," and this is more specifically about the arrest. This is from the 7th of October 2016. Now keep in mind, a couple months from now, Melissa Hodgman will be promoted to Associate Director of the SEC. And 2 farms were seized in this raid. We're not going to go into the whole thing, but I want to take you down to this part here. By early 2012, the FBI began a surveillance operation on Mall and his alleged accomplices. Multiple times, Mall visited small retailers to make large cash purchases of bags of the latest seeds from different companies, from which authorities learned it also could be possible to extract a small number of valuable, pure, inbred seeds mixed in with the rest of the hybrid seeds. Later, investigators discovered Mall and other kept bags of seeds and corn stalks in storage lockers. The FBI surveillance involved bugging a rental car used by 2 of the alleged accomplices, which the FBI says caught a conversation while they were driving in the Midwest in September 2012. In it, one notes that if things go wrong, it could have serious consequences for them. They could treat us as spies, one of the men says, according to the complaint. All right, let me take you down a little bit further here. Later the same month, the elaborate plan fell apart when some of Ma's purported co-conspirators attempted to fly back to China. Inside one man's bags were 2 bulk-sized microwave popcorn boxes, each appearing to be factory sealed, the complaint says. Upon opening the boxes, on top were actual microwave packages of popcorn, but once they were moved, inside each box were approximately 100 small manila envelopes with a generic number written on each one, the complaint says, and inside the envelope, seeds. So there you go. We have a lot of curious elements that we're also seeing come into play right now, right? We have all these references to corn, James Corney, James Comey, Iowa, China, spying. All very curious stuff, right? All we need now is a Clinton. Well, give me a little time here. Now, it's all going down in Iowa. So keep in mind, James Comey is standing in a newly planted field, meaning he just spread some seeds. So good to see new growth in Iowa and across the country. So maybe this means that this is popping up all over the country, right? New growth. And of course, we had some new growth. This is another story from KSDK.com. This is NBC5. Chinese national who worked at Monsanto faces espionage charge. Now, this was just as recent as November 2019. Federal prosecutors announced Thursday that Hai Tao Xiang, formerly of Chesterfield, was indicted by a federal grand jury on 8 charges. And this one was curious too. According to the indictment, Xiang worked at Monsanto and its subsidiary, the Climate Corporation, which does not at all sound suspect, from 2008 to 2017. He's accused of taking an algorithm called the Nutrient Optimizer that aimed to improve agricultural productivity. Federal prosecutors said in a news release the day after Xiang quit at Monsanto, he bought a one-way ticket to China. He was arrested before he boarded his flight, and investigators confiscated copies of the Nutrient Optimizer. Okay, so this is some serious stuff, and like I said, this seed stuff is no joke. This is the kind of stuff that goes in your mouth, and if you want to control a population, controlling these seeds is going to be an easy way to do that. So this involves a lot of things, and if the FBI had jumped on this long ago, how is this still popping up? Is this just such a hard issue to maintain, or does James nobody's homie Comey have something to do with this? And of course, like I said, we got to have a Clinton involved, right? Now, we all know that Hillary Clinton was deeply wrapped up with Monsanto, and I want to take you over to this one right here. This is from globalresearch.ca. There's a few cool things here, but the point right here is in the middle of the article. Back in the 1990s, during the era when Vince Foster was murdered for what he knew about the Clintons, Hillary Clinton was a partner at the Rose Law Firm. This law firm counted Monsanto as its client. And this is an important one because the Rose Law Firm is wrapped up in a lot of things, and so is Monsanto. Her history of backing GMO dates back to her early days in Arkansas as a lawyer with the Rose Law Firm, which represented Monsanto and other agribusiness leaders, reports the Washington Times. Now, I want to stop right there because this got me thinking about the cryptic Christmas video that Melania Trump recently posted, and when she was reaching for a card on the tree, the name was Rose. Almost none of today's activist voters are even old enough to remember the Rose Law Firm, the Clintons' Whitewater scandal, or even the fact that Hillary Clinton ran the media attacks on all the women who tried to go to public with claims of being sexually violated by Bill Clinton. Okay, so again, we start to get in a little bit of opinion stuff, and I want to stay away from that. But the point is I wanted to bring up her relationship with this Rose Law Firm, who has long represented Monsanto, and of course, she's got a lot of Monsanto people in her pocket. Here is a source from Natural News from back in 2015 showing who donated what, and as you can see, Hillary got a ton of money from Microsoft, Walmart, Coca-Cola, Qatar, Goldman Sachs, the usual knuckleheads. But if you go down far enough, sure enough, you see about $500,000. Looked like it led to a lot more from Monsanto. So there you go. Yeah, and this much. So even more than $1 million. So Monsanto was definitely deeply wrapped up with the Clintons. So now that we've got our usual suspects, let's go back to the thread. I guess there's just something about Iowa. Yes, indeed. I'm sure it's a lovely place. Lots of beautiful corn there. And James Comey thinks so. October 21st, 2017, he's out standing in his field right there. Only now the corn is high, but the sun is setting. Good to be back in Iowa. So are we suggesting here that maybe this is sort of a new kind of training ground, very much like Camp Peary, sort of a new farm for a new breed of alphabet agency knuckleheads, whether it be FBI, CIA, you name it? Is that what's going on? And is this related to our spying and our sharing of intel? And does this have to do with Hillary Clinton and her laptop, where there's some GMO seed exchanges being registered on this laptop? I don't really know, but it seems very curious, and they all seem very connected. And it all goes down in Iowa. Well, Chuck Grassley knows a bit about Iowa. He's ready for the corn for to be cut. There's his Instagram. He's posted about corn a few times, calls it Corn Watch. There he is in his own field. He's got a machine. He's like, I'm so into corn, I drive this machine because I'm into corn. Picking corn on the Grassley farm with my son Robin in our corn picking machine. Hashtag National Farmers Day. Hashtag Corn Watch. Well, that's right. Senator Chuck Grassley's from Iowa. Devin Nunes has a family farm in Iowa. He's ready for the corn for to be cut. Curious? Corn ready for to be cut. For to. Well, this corn looks like it's past its prime. The moisture's all drained out of it. Chuck Grassley taught us all about that. But nobody's homie Comey. It's different if you say corny. Is at a crossroads. And then you remember this picture right here, where he's out standing in the road. Get out of the road, James! Get out of the road, James! Never know, Devin Nunes could come by in his tractor. Only this time he's looking at a green field, and behind him is the plowed field. I wonder if there's any significance. Get out of the road, James. Notice he's looking at the green. Behind him is a plowed field. But what about 4-2? 4-2 be cut? Well, 4-2 was Bill Clinton, and surely he has no ties to Monsanto, except for he totally does. And it's a bit weird, and it is. Now, this takes you to another blog from G. Edward Griffin's Need to Know. It's true, Bill Clinton asked Russia to interfere in a U.S. presidential election. But I want to take you down here because he is referencing an AP report from 96. The Associated Press reports on March 28, 1996, citing a classified memo, the Washington Times reported yesterday that Clinton had promised Yeltsin, being Boris Yeltsin, to back his re-election bid by formulating positive policies towards Russia. On a matter important to his political supporters in Arkansas, Clinton asked Yeltsin to stop restricting poultry imports. This is a big issue, especially since 40% of U.S. poultry is produced in Arkansas. Clinton said, according to the memo. On Monday, Vice President Al Gore announced Russia was lifting the ban, which was imposed because of the suspicion that U.S. chickens are not inspected sufficiently for salmonella, which causes illness. Clinton promises to back Yeltsin in his effort to win the presidency of Russia. Well, it sounds like a quid pro quo. In return, because it is important to Clinton's political supporters, Clinton asked Yeltsin to lift Russia's ban on importing chickens, particularly since 40% of the U.S. poultry is produced in Arkansas. All right, well, that's obviously Clinton's home state. And of course, here it says, and it gets worse. The major chicken producer in Arkansas is Tyson. The Fiscal Times reports on February 2016. Consider a largely forgotten financial scandal that directly involved Hillary Clinton during 1978 and 1979. Under the guidance of an attorney representing Tyson Foods, Hillary Clinton made a $98,000 profit from a $1,000 initial investment in less than 1 year trading commodity futures. While $98,000 may not seem like much money relative to the Clintons' family wealth today, it exceeded Bill and Hillary's combined annual income at the time. So this article will be included in the thread, and of course the thread will be linked down below so you can check all this out. But this was a pretty big deal back in the day. As a matter of fact, you may even remember during the presidential elections, candidate Ross Perot was teasing Bill all the time, calling him Chicken Man, Chicken Bill, and all this, which later became Chicken Bar, which was not nearly as creative. But yeah, he was calling him Chicken Man. And of course, he was making tons of money. And how about that? It was coming from Russia off of a quid pro quo. Interesting, right? Well, this ended up going real south because the Tyson chicken plant was also contaminating the water out there in Arkansas. And this became a real point of contention, especially when Hillary was trying to attack President Trump about Flint, Michigan. So this was definitely some irony. And lots of kids out there in Arkansas were getting salmonella. It was a really, really big PR nightmare for Bill Clinton. So we see that Clinton, Tyson, Monsanto, they're all wrapped up together. And of course, they were making a ton of money overseas. And it looks like now they were recruiting the Chinese to help leak some of our seeds. And of course, this was all going down in Arkansas, the home of the Clintons. And then I included an email here, and I'm not going to go through it, but it's just an email to Hillary Clinton from a random person that I thought people might find very interesting. Like I said, this will all be linked down below here. But my point was, is this the reference to 4-2 being the 42nd president, Bill Clinton? Is it time for to be cut? Is this a connection that we have to China that we haven't really been paying attention to? I'm not so sure, but it was just a thought that I had. And maybe if you're at a crossroads, you choose one day and your name gets spelled correctly. You choose another, it just ends up sounding corny. Well, who knows? It looks like they were using these misspellings for a couple of different reasons, right? But it looks like this is also being pointed out to James Comey, and it looks like these different tweets going back and forth has kind of forced James Comey to choose whether or not he has a higher loyalty. Now, who his loyalty is to, I think there's a lot of debate down below, and I'd love to hear what you think. But that was my trail in regards to this thread and possibly some connections to these Comey corny references. All right, Patriots, that's all I got for you for now. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who do that. Hopefully you can come over here and check us out on BitChute, as I have no idea if this is going to be taken down off of YouTube or not. That being said, all my alternate links are linked down below. My Gab, my BitChute, my DropSpace, my Brighteon. Join me on one of those alternate platforms. And of course, I'm over there at IPOT 1776 on Twitter. That's at IPOT 1776. And if you are on Twitter, please join me over there, as I am usually providing a lot of material that I do not put into videos. That's IPOT 1776. It's all down below in the video description, as well as the link to the thread we just covered. My email is down below. If you have any information you'd like to share, please do not DM me on social media. I only take information through my email. Thank you very much. And my P.O. box is down below if you're old school. Thanks to all of you who send me neat little gifts and all sorts of fun stuff and cards. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. And of course, if you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon is linked down below. It's all in the video description. All right, this is Sir Patrick Mack. Till next time, stay funky.